Could your poop be the secret to ending the pandemic?
Who is going to die from COVID because of their microbiome?
We have the dirty detail. That's today.
Welcome to the doctors. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has proven to be one of the most trying times for scientists, doctors, and people alike. But as time goes on, we're discovering more and more. And one of the latest findings is showing up in an unexpected place.
You've seen the headlines about COVID hiding in the brain, but now researchers are finding the virus may also be living in your stool. A recent study identified COVID-19 genetic material along with 33 mutations in stool samples of COVID patients. They are finding that it can live in the gut even in asymptomatic patients for up to 45 days. This shocking finding not only changes what we thought we knew about transmission, but also supplies answers to COVID's perplexing behavior and why some people get hospitalized while others don't even get a fever. COVID is making your gut its home. What does this mean for you and the future of treatment and prevention?
Joining us is gastroenterologist and co-author of Let's Talk, Dr. Sabine Hazan. Well, Dr. Hazan, you and your team were the ones that discovered COVID's entire genetic code in the stool. So why do you think the virus was found there in the first place?
COVID actually sits on the ACE2 receptor. Where is the biggest organ where the ACE2 receptor are found? The ACE2 receptors are found, the bowels. So it made sense to me to look there because that's where everything ends.
We heard in the tape that COVID can linger in your gut for up to 45 days. So the big question is, does that mean that it's transmissible for that long, doctor?
You know, we don't know. I think it's too early to know, but certainly that gives you an insight onto why does a worker go back to work and that person a month later, the colleagues or the workers are now positive, right? So
Right.
they'll carry it in the gut, and therefore they clear their upper respiratory symptoms, but then it's still in the gut. And when he goes in the bathroom, it becomes airborne. So essentially, the bathroom is your biggest risk factor, the public bathroom. So you've got to be careful with that.
Why is this finding so important?
I think it's so important because at the end of the day, we need to understand what's going on in the gut. We need to understand who is going to die from COVID because of their microbiome versus who's not. For two, it makes a difference on to what therapy am I giving? I need a therapy that focuses on the gut. That's the most important thing.
So is there any way for people to determine if they have a strong or weak microbiome?
So we're not there yet. That's the whole basis of my research lab is really to write the dictionary of the microbiome and disease. We are seeing that if you have an imbalance in the gut, you are more predisposed to disease. We are seeing that diseases are all about imbalances. We're publishing all that. We started with autism, and we noticed that autism is actually potentially a gut dysbiosis. In other words, something in the microbiome is altered and we just need to replace it.
Just thinking about COVID testing in general, if there's a mutation, like hopefully that PCR test will pick up on the other points that it also looks at. But some PCR tests only focus on one portion of the genome, like a very small portion of the genome. And if there's a mutation, then that particular PCR test is just not going to pick it up. So you're going to get the swab and it's going to be negative. You're going to have this false sense of security. And to add on to that, you're saying your research says even if your swab is negative and it's still hanging out in your stool, you may still pass it. But in addition to that, we know that more people are being vaccinated. If someone is vaccinated and they get exposed to COVID,
Right.
Is there any chance it could hide in the stool so it's not causing symptoms for them? But although it's not causing symptoms for them, it's still transmissible. They can still give it to someone else.
Well, I think the key thing with the vaccine is we really need to screen better, right? So we need to screen to make sure we are not giving the vaccine to people that are carrying it, because then that becomes dangerous because you're giving a vaccine And then on top of that, they're starting to incubate the virus. What does that do to those people? Are the people that are dying from the vaccine actually, had COVID to begin with? So screening is very important, and screening the right area, right? So you've seen in China where they're doing anal swabs. We're not even there yet in America. I'm sure it's coming. After this episode, everybody's going to start lining up to test their stools, but we're not there yet. And so that's one. Number two, remember with hepatitis C, we needed a quantifying PCR, right? The quantity of virus that is in your blood. We need the same thing here with COVID. We need to know, because remember, ACE2 receptors also sit in the blood vessels. So it's obvious that you have COVID in the blood vessels. You need to look at the blood. And so quantitative PCR is very important.
Since you say our microbiome is essentially our immunity, how can people maintain a healthy one?
Well, I think the first thing is, obviously, we've noticed that people that drink a lot of coffee alter the microbiome. So, 1 cup of coffee is okay, but if you drink 4 or 5 cups, and that's common sense, right? The other thing we've noticed is people that are overweight tend to do poorly with COVID. So the first thing is, if you're at home quarantine, get on that bike and start losing weight. And of course, it's not easy because we're all stressed, we're listening to the news, etc. So cut down your stress, meditate, know that you're going to be fine. Know that 99.9% of people do fine, right? So that's the first thing to understand. And then the second thing to understand is that vitamin D. If you're quarantined at home, you're going to deplete your vitamin D. So you need to boost your vitamin D. You need to get out in the sun, or you need to at least supplement. Zinc is a blocking nutrient for the COVID-19. It stops it from going into the cells. Zinc is very important. Vitamin C boosts your immunity. We're going to actually demonstrate that with the microbiome. The paper's coming. So it's fascinating that there are things that we can do to boost our immunity, and it's common sense in a way, but we need to be reminded. And I think we need to do a better job. And you guys have been doing a fantastic job, by the way, saying that to patients. And I think people need to hear it more.
Well, Dr. Hazan, very enlightening. Thank you so much for joining us. I must say, you do know your
Yes, I do.
We look forward to hearing what you and your team come up with next. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good stuff.